What's up, Operators family? Welcome to episode 78 of the Operators Podcast. Me, Mike, Matt, talking about global world travel, talking about China, Italy, consumer trends. At the end, there's a little bit of the election because it's October and we do not know what's going to happen, but you can hear our takes without Jason screaming in the background because he is off this week. I want to thank you to Fulfill, the #1 sponsor. Postscript, Northbeam, #2 sponsor. I use all three of those softwares. I love them dearly. And if you're a fan of the Operators Podcast, check out the Moperators Podcast, the Marketing Operators Podcast, our spin-off show with people we really love and care about. We have a newsletter. This week, we were going to talk about our top 100 softwares and give them a Sean score from 1 to 5. So stick around. Thank you for being here. Subscribe, share to your friends. We'll get into the show, episode 78. One of the most challenging things about running an e-commerce business at scale, when you're doing thousands of transactions a day across multiple different sales channels, is the operational complexity that scales with it. You have to do refunds on eBay and you have to do customer service tickets on Amazon, and everything just kind of gets out of hand. You get reports from Shopify and Amazon, and all of them have weird, unique parameters that don't match the way you look at things, and you're manipulating data, and you just want one source of truth that has gross revenue, discounts, COGS, margin. You just want one thing that has all of it. And that's where Fulfill comes out of the box with the best reporting in the business. It provides accurate, reliable data systems. It does order management for you. And it does all that without needing customization. They've worked with e-commerce businesses like mine at Ridge, like Hexclad, and they've built the most accurate, up-to-date reporting that comes right out of the box. It has real-time insights. You can make better decisions, and you know when you sell something, what you sold it for, what the COGS were, and if you have to do returns or refunds, you know all of that in one spot, in one out-of-the-box report. So thank you so much, Phil, for being the flagship sponsor of this pod. If you order something from me, it will be sent through Fulfill's data pipelines to my 3PL. If you do it from Amazon, that comes into the Fulfill reporting as well. So thank you, Fulfill. You're the best. Were you in Colombia or were you in Columbus?
So I went to, after the senior leadership retreat, I went to Columbia for Main Street Summit. Not Columbus. Although it is Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, depending on what you celebrate today.
So we have a lot to break down. One, you bring the spouses to the leadership retreat?
Absolutely. So it's not really a leadership retreat. We don't do any planning, but here's my whole thought process on this. No one makes any career decisions without their spouse, right? And so no one leaves a job without their spouse wanting them to leave that job. And so I see the spouses as completely just an extension of the team. Like if one of my guys goes to China, for example, the spouse is the one that's taking the kids and pulling double duty. Like it's totally a team effort. And so it's not just something I say, I really do believe it. And so we invite both the people that are a part of the leadership team and all their spouses. And as a result, we have this really, really tight community kind of with the leadership group. And basically our leadership group just doesn't turn over. And I think that's part of the reason why we've been so successful is that we're not having to retrain people. We're not having to go hire people because people get in, they stay in, and it makes it a heck of a lot easier to run the company.
Look at the military strategist.
Yeah. How many total people come in the thing?
There were 30, 31, 32.
Wow.
32 people at this one.
Yeah.
And we did all kinds of fun stuff, man. We had one night where we had a big wine tasting, and then we do these big dinners. So it was Park City this year. Last couple of years, we've been at this resort called Terranea that's in the Long Beach area, which is awesome. So anyway, it's a highlight. Like especially the spouses look forward to it all year.
How much does it cost?
Maybe 50 to 75. But I mean, you think about it and it's like, well, how much are you investing in your senior leadership team? To me, it's actually a pretty good ROI. Like if you give one really seminal memory during the year and all the spouses are looking forward to it and everybody feels like part of the community, like, investing that much money and making sure that everybody's really connected is pretty easy to justify.
And sorry, Matt, I've been jumping all over what you wanted to say, dude. So you have a couple questions.
I actually, Mike, just the cost of replacing one person on that team is probably more than 50,000 or
Sure. I
75,000.
mean, how much would you pay a headhunter for one executive role that
Right.
you had to fill? And never mind the fact that like when you switch over one of those roles, like there's just you lose so much efficiency. So I actually think this is an arbitrage kind of opportunity that exists. So I have this big theory about just money and compensation, and that is that you can compensate somebody 15 different ways. You can compensate them through salary or bonuses or additional benefits, or you can do perks or whatever. And that some of them you just get way more bang for your buck than others. And I think this is one example where if I just said, "Hey, I'm giving everybody a little bit of a raise," as a group, you're going to make 75,000 more dollars and it's going to hit your account through direct deposit. Like I would get almost nothing out of that. But instead of doing it this way, I think I get tremendous amounts of burn out of it. And so I'm constantly trying to think about that of like, what are the ways that I can make compensation dollars be more effective and go further?
Hmm. And there's no time. Do you guys do like separate stuff like spouses and leadership team, or is it kind of always everybody together?
We've tried different things. This time it's just a social thing. We
Hmm.
we actually did our annual kind of planning, getting ready for our OKRs before we left, and then when we left, it was like, hey, we're hanging. And it's also kind of cool the way that we did it this time. It was like you can hang out with your spouse and go hiking or ride bikes or do whatever, or you can kind of hang out with a small group. But there wasn't this pressure of like, hey, everybody's got to be together, forced fun. It's kind of like it was more organic. We had a big text thread, and if people wanted to hang out, they could. If they wanted to be by themselves, they could. And then at night, we would do nice dinners.
Sean, do you guys do a big ridge thing? Don't you? Like everybody comes out. It's like a big party or a big something.
Yeah, yeah. And I was just doing the math because I'm like 75K to put everybody up in like a nice resort. So our Ridge retreat, it's probably going to be 100 people this year. So it's 80 full-time US Ridge employees. And we bring in like our best international contractors come in. And then like we extend it to some of the friends of the brands. So if you guys want to come, I'll save you guys a room. But like we
Where is
own
it?
that. It's in Vegas. So no spouses typically come.
Oh hell no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but so it probably costs us like 300K because we do flights and then we book 100 rooms at like one of the main on strip resorts, and then during the day it is planning and leadership and like all of like the company stuff. We have like presentations, whatever, and then it's 5 nights, so it's a really long time in Vegas. And so each one of the nights we do either like we'll like rent out a bowling hall or something, or take everybody to one of the shows on the strip or something. But yeah, you're totally right, Mike. There's different ways to compensate people. And like, what are the memories worth? If you took 15 of your employees together and said, hey, everyone gets
Yeah.
$4,000 raise, like enjoy it over the next 12 months. Every paycheck you get $300. Nobody's going to be stoked by that.
No.
So
No. I mean, it's kind of like what the idea of spend your money on experiences and not things. That's what we remember. And so as a company, when we're able to turn compensation into experiences, it makes sense that people would value that more. I'm going to go back to China in 3 weeks. I haven't been actually since COVID, which is wild. But the China trips, even though like physically it's a beat down, are absolutely some of my best memories because I end up getting 5, 6, 7 days to hang out with people on our team and the relationship building. I've always felt like the trips that our team does, whether it's trade shows or line reviews or trips to China or whatever, have been. I mean, those are the memories I'm going to look back on and that are going to matter the most to me whenever I'm on the other side of it.
yeah. Okay. So here's the agenda for today's call. So I want to ask some questions about going to China, entire leadership retreats. Then I want to know if you went to the country of Colombia or if there's some city I don't know about. Why is the Main Street Summit in Colombia? And then Matt is going to sum up why he's in Italy and all the stuff he's doing. So we have a very global episode today to listen to.
That's around the world, man.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Uh, so Mike, I want to hear about how the logistics of getting to China. You said it's exhausting.
everyone wants to know, do you fly business class, and what are the direct flights from Oklahoma to Guangzhou looking like?
Yeah, that's
That's
exactly
as good as
the
mine.
Oklahoma Shanghai direct is does not happen. Oklahoma City's airport is called it's called the Will Rogers World Airport, and it's the most aspirational probably moniker that I've ever seen an airport have. So this is actually funny because I'll tell stories about just being bootstrapped and being poor basically, even though the company was growing. What we realized, we were taking lots of trips to China early on, 16, 17. I think we calculated, this is crazy. Like if you go to China and come back, you end up being in a plane 30 something hours. It's almost like spending an entire work week in a plane. And our chief manufacturing officer, who's been my friend for years, going back to college, he 1 year, I think he spent like 400 hours in a plane. Like he spent 10 work weeks just in the air going back and forth to China, and not even including the time he was on the ground. But we learned that I don't know if it's the 747, but in one of Boeing's planes, there's this weird quirk design wise where in the back of the plane, it kind of curves in. And so they're not able to go 3 seats out in the rows. They can only go 2 seats out. And there's kind of this dead space. And so here's the key. You make friends with you become very friendly with the stewardesses before the flight takes off. International flights, there's like a 30, 45 minute, hour long wait, and you become friendly, you talk, you chat them up. And then when the flight starts, not only do they kind of bring you extras, but we would go to sleep on the floor of the plane. So we would go back into this little like homeless corner. We had our own little encampment, and we would sleep on the floor of the plane, because sleeping in chairs, I don't know if you guys are able to do it. I'm not able to do it. I cannot sleep in those chairs. And so that was our kind of tent city version of bootstrapped business class, is sleeping on the floor of the back of the 747.
Yeah, so do you fly Oklahoma to what,
Yeah,
Seattle?
you go OKC, Dallas, and there is actually a Dallas direct to Shanghai. And so I've never really understood this. Maybe you guys can explain it to me, but it's 16 hours going, and then it's like 14 coming back, or 13 and a half coming back, or maybe yeah, I think that's right. I think it's longer going. And that was always weird to me. Although I guess there's this weird thing now with Russia where they used to fly over part of Russia, and now Russia won't allow that. And so it's become more extended because you have to kind of go a circuitous route. But I mean, the way that I describe that flight, I don't know, Sean, you've been there, but like, it's like, it's like you're being tortured, and you've been on a plane, and you've been on a plane so long that you're like, I think I want to die. And then you've got 6 more hours left.
Yeah.
And that's what flying to China is, right? Like I once watched an entire season of Ozark in one flight.
Yeah.
That's insane.
What I'll say is, look, I understand business class is incredibly expensive. I think round trip business class from LA to, I typically go Hong Kong because I love Hong Kong as a city. I spent a couple days there. I think it's like $6,000 round trip, but it's like a Cathay Pacific, very, very old plane. I just think I'll just save me more than $6,000 when I'm there negotiating. I'll make up for it on the ground. That's typically the way I look at it.
I have, it is more tempting than ever before. I have never flown it. We've always flown like the cheapest we can. I'm looking right now. I'm going to try and find out what do you guys think the business class round trip is?
Well, you're screwed if you're only locked into one flight option. Like if you're just gonna go Dallas to Shanghai, there's probably one flight a night, and there's only one flight you can get on. Where if you're willing to go to SFO or LA, like because you already have to fucking catch a flight anyway, Mike. You can get it for $3,000. There'll be a 3 or 4 grand round trip, and who cares? You're already taking a transfer.
Dude, I'm looking at these flights. If you're, it's only, you can get it for as little as 10,000 round trip, Sean, but the flight that I'm looking at is 26 hours of travel. So
Yeah, but anyway,
I'm not looking forward to the trip to China. It's a total beatdown on your biological or your whatever your clock, but it's a lot of fun.
dude, especially like tech. Like the one reason I left Austin was Like one of the main reasons was I was spending so much time on fucking airplanes. Like at least LA has an airport you can get anywhere in the world. Uh,
Yeah.
the other thing I'll recommend, dude, go to Japan on the way back because going there is actually really easy. I love going to China because like you sleep, like you time it right. The plane leaves at midnight. Like you stay up a little bit, you sleep, you wake up, it's the morning. It feels like normal life. Coming back is so fucking hard on the body. So I always just stop in Japan because if you go to Japan, it's a 10-hour flight, super easy.
Yeah, I've thought about Sean going to the Maldives because they're like way the heck out over there. Like, I mean, it's like it's still a flight from China to the Maldives, but like I don't know, whatever. It's 20 something hours of travel if you come from the US. And so I've thought about doing that as kind of a reward for the team of you go China and then you go to the Maldives before you come back. But it ends up being such a long trip. When you have kids, that's a problem when you're traveling. When you have kids, you're just like basically throwing your spouse to the wolves for like 7 days, 9 days or something.
Mike, you go for a week typically for these trips, like
Yeah, I
manufacturers and
mean, you pretty much have to just because like you spend, you set on fire 2 days just in the travel piece of it. So if I think the shortest we've ever done is 5 days, and that's just 3 days in country. I think kind of the sweet spot's probably 6 to 8, and with 2 of those being travel days.
Postscript is the only SMS solution you should be using as a brand store owner because their sole focus is on SMS. They're the biggest innovators in the space, and their latest launch of Postscript AI is proof of this. I got to see the demo a couple months back and immediately wanted in on the beta. And over the course of a 4-week period, Postscript generated, for Ridge, over $124,000 in AI-driven revenue. We used a holdout, so I can confidently say 12,000 of that is purely incremental. A 9% lift in browse abandonment, 14% on checkout, and our best performing abandoned cart flow had a 29% lift on click-through rate and a 21% lift on earnings per message. Should I say that again, but maybe a little slower? 12,000 in incremental revenue, a 9% lift on our browse abandonment, 14% lift on our checkout abandonment, and a 21% lift on our abandoned cart automation. And the work from our team was close to zero to generate these numbers. There's 2 things about Postscript AI that I'm personally really excited about. One is Brand Center. It's the central nucleus of all of their AI message testing. We get to feed them exactly how we want to sound, what words to say, avoid, who we want our personas to be, and tune that over time to make sure our AI-generated messaging is on brand as much as possible. I think Brand Center will power messaging everywhere potentially. Right now, we've just got it in our SMS flows, but I think it could go a lot more places. The second one is now that you've got this Brand Center, you can do infinity testing. So you can imagine maybe once, twice, 3 times a quarter, we're setting up an A/B test to understand, is this message better than this one? Infinity testing does that in the background constantly, testing hundreds and thousands of variations to identify the optimal messaging given each flow. When I first heard this described, it immediately made me think that A/B testing feels very archaic. So I'm incredibly excited about both Brand Center and Infinity testing. So if you're in D2C marketing, you need to check this out. They've completely transformed how the team at Ridge is approaching SMS. Go to postscript.io/AI to learn more.
Okay, well, speaking about a global ass podcast, Matt, what are you doing in Italy, man?
I've been here for 2 weeks. I'm going back tomorrow, guys. I'm excited to go home. Dude, I don't know, you guys, like, Sean, you were in Europe this year, right? Like for a week or 2 or something. There's comforts of home, like creature comforts of being at home that you just start to miss. And I find like 2 weeks is like the witching hour of travel. And after 2 weeks, you get used to wherever you are. But right around the 2 weeks mark, it's like, just get me out of this place. And this is coming from like an Italian who's in Italy, who spent most of my time with my cousins. I had a cousin who had a 75th birthday. And then I brought my wife and my daughter with me. And I'm in Rome right now recording this. But I have been, part of what I do when I come to Europe is I like to spend a lot of time in like retail land, just seeing how brands and consumer behavior looks here versus in America. Because we spend so much time in our own country, in our own homes, like we don't really pay attention. It's hard to get a sense of the difference between like America and the rest of the world. Probably, Sean, I imagine being in LA, this is even more true for someone like you, but Mike and I live in like secondary cities, like small places. So when I travel, man, it is like, it's insane. I can tell you this, there are so many ways to do consumer, guys. Like there's so many paths to market. I'm on in Rome right now. I went I'm on Via del Corso, which is like the main retail strip. So every American big brand is here. Like that was shocking to me, is like how pervasive American brands are in Europe. Like the big ones are everywhere. Biggest store on this strip is a Nike store by a mile. But there's a freaking shop that sells rubber duckies. Like the whole store is just rubber duckies. I will send you guys this video. I went in and I'm like, this is like the masterclass in licensing. It's every single licensed property in the form of a fucking rubber duck. And I walked in and I'm like, I looked at my wife. First thing I said is, any idea that you ever hear out of my mouth, and if you feel compelled to tell me it's stupid, remember, we're in a store full of rubber ducks. There's nothing else in here. There's no cross sell.
I don't know if I've
nothing.
said this before, but it reminds me of something I read that is fascinating. It was about how the internet is kind of like a really, really big city, that in really, really big cities, you just get so much traffic, just, crazy amounts of traffic, that it's able to support much more niche things, right? So like if you go to Tokyo, for example, you'll see stuff like that, like the rubber duck store. And you're like, how in the world are you able to have a rubber duck store that's so specific? But the reality is just the volume of people is so big that there's I guess one in every however many thousands of people is like, I got to have a rubber duck. And it's basically a representation of the internet. If you think about it, when you get into the really big cities, you're kind of getting an idea of what the internet does, which is when you get really, really big numbers of people, even if something's very specific, there's still a lot of people a lot of nominal people that'll be interested in that thing. And so I can tell you definitively, there are no rubber duck stores in Oklahoma City, but it makes sense that, Rome might be able to support one.
Dude, you know what other thing that blew me away, Mike, was just on that analogy? It's the store density for the same brand. Like one brand will have 3 stores within 20 minutes walking of each other.
Well, dude, that's the shocking thing about Hong Kong, Tokyo, like any of the Chinese cities, is that like you'll pull up a map and there's 6 Lululemons within walking distance, and it's like, who is like, I can't walk more than 17 minutes to get to a Lululemon. It's like goes against the whole fitness aspect of the brand, right?
You know what? The other thing on the Lulu, one of the things I wrote down is athleisure is not a thing here. So like my family lives on the Adriatic coast. Right now I'm on the Mediterranean coast, for those that don't know Italy. Small town where we live, like 60,000 people. So I wouldn't expect athleisure to be a thing there. But I am in Rome and we have been everywhere in this city, both tourist and non-tourist areas. Athleisure is not a thing. Like people don't walk around. Like women are not wearing black tights from Lulu or Alo here. And then the other thing as a guy is that like, I was just thinking everything, my brain just works in consumer land. Brands, if you're in a fashion brand expanding to Europe, like, wow, that must be hard. Because like men's basics isn't a thing here either. Like there's all these men's basics brands like True Classic and Mott & Bow and all these guys. I don't know if I've seen a dude walking around in a t-shirt and jeans like you would in LA, like LA t-shirt culture. Like that's normal in New York or LA. Here, nope. So it got me thinking that if you were going to expand to Europe, I'm broad stroking here, but like I imagine the rest of Europe, I haven't spent a lot of time there, but it is so hyper local for some of these categories that you don't just turn on ads and expect to do well. I imagine you'll find somebody, but man, you walk the streets of these cities, it's not the same place. Like it's not at all.
I'd just be curious, like, so you said it's popping right now, that it's bustling in Europe.
Dude, it's insane.
Yeah. So what's the vibe? So like economically, people are doing well.
I don't understand. So like, this is probably my 7th time in Rome, maybe more. I don't know. I've been here a lot. This is my first time post-COVID. I have never seen this city this busy. Like it makes China feel quiet. Like it's like a sea of people, nonstop, wall to wall. My wife and I were walking around. I'm like, I don't get it. So my first thought was, there's no way anybody has any money to spend in Q4 this year because they're all spending it coming to Europe. Airports are rammed. The streets are full. Everything's booked. Every restaurant slammed. Every store is packed. So I don't know. I'm confused. Where all the, is this just the top 1% that's here? And there's just that many of them globally that they all pack into a place like Rome? Like, is that just the law of large numbers on a planet like this? Maybe, but it's really shocking at how busy everywhere is.
Yeah, and is it what? So is it Americans? Is it Chinese tourists or is it just everybody?
No, man, it's like remarkably American, remarkably not Asian.
Yeah. So, that kind of echoes when I was in London over the summer, and I went to the Taylor Swift show there, and the first thing I noticed was there was more Americans in London than English people. Like,
Yes,
goddamn, we were like 2 to 1 outnumbering everybody. And I think this kind of goes to the trend of a globalized American citizen, right? Like, and there's a chart that is real that a larger percentage of the American population has passports than the French population. So like that
shocking.
goes yeah, that goes against the stereotypes for 10 or 20 years is that like, oh, Americans don't travel, Americans like aren't worldly, and like, oh, Europeans, like it's because it's every country's so tiny they just go around. It's like 40% of French people have a passport. It's like 12% of Japanese people have a passport. In America, it's like 50% of us now. There's 150 fucking million people who have the strongest dollar and a really strong economy. So we're like, yeah, fuck
It
it, we'll go
shows.
anywhere.
It shows, man. I was before Rome, we were driving back from where my family lives, and one of the reasons I wanted to come to Italy is I wanted to go to the head office, like the HQ of Brunello Cucinelli. Sean, you'll know who that is, right? Mike, I
Yes.
don't know if you know who that is, but so this little
Oh,
town
I'm
called.
so offended. How dare you, Matt?
Well, you're in Arkansas, Mike.
I don't know who that is.
You're right. So, Mike, there's
Sean's
something.
the accessories fashion guy.
Yeah, Mike. So there's something called a suit, and you wear it like in very very professional environments, and he
Back in
makes a
Sean's
very
day.
nice one.
Is this kind of like underwear? Where do you wear this on your body, Sean?
So they're known, Mike. They're it's actually a really cool brand. Go read the guy who founded it. He's still alive. They're known for cashmere, and it's like a little farming village in the middle of nowhere called Solomeo. And I wanted to go see this because basically everybody in the region works for him. It's like a $3 billion a year brand, so it's not a small brand. And they've got us like the original store is in this little village. There's nothing else there. There's like a little store for him, for the brand. They're factories, and then like theaters and stuff that are basically for the brand. They just restored the whole place using the cash this brand generates. The retail experience in this place is insane. If anybody listening is like into that world, Florence is typically you want to go there to see like Italian, like certain parts of Italian fashion, Florence, and then definitely Milan. But like this was cool because this is just a factory town, right? Which you see in parts of the world. Here, it's really prevalent. Like every little city has like a factory or a sector that employs the city. In this particular case, it's like this one guy and this one brand. But the hotel I was at is like maybe a 16-room hotel. Okay, really small, amazing hotel. Sean, I know you're big into hotels. This is one of the best hotel experiences I've ever had. I'll send you the link. It's freaking insane. 15 of those rooms were Americans. One was Canadian. Like we had dinner because the hotel is like in the middle of nowhere. So you sort of eat there every night. So we like there for 2 nights. Every single person in the restaurant was American. We were killing ourselves laughing. We're like, we're in the middle of nowhere, Umbria in Italy. And this little hotel is nothing but Americans. And there's nothing around, guys. Like there's nothing to see. It's farms. And I'm like, and there's still Americans here.
Yeah, dude. No, I mean, very similar experience. I was fucking 2.5 hour drive into Switzerland at this like weird fucking like resort on the shore of a lake, and I get out and I look around. It's just a bunch of fucking guys who look like me. I'm like, God damn it, this is my vacation. It's like I'm hanging out with my cousins.
So the other consumer thing that I thought of while I've been here was mostly when I was hanging out with my family for a week in Fano. They've got so many of their own brands, right? So like there's the big brands that everybody knows. Then there's people like us, like D2C small operations. There's actually one that's in like San Marino, which is a country into itself. It's inside of Italy, population's like 30,000 people. There's like a $40 million D2C brand there. They've got like a little store in the village and they crush it online. I think I want to figure out how to have a phone with an Instagram account in every major country we sell in, just so I can see local culture and local ads. That was my thought walking around. I'm like, man, I wish I could get a feed here, right? Because what my cousins were showing me on their phones and what they see, so different than anything I see locally. And I'm like, I sell in this country. We sell a lot in this country. And I don't know a damn thing. Like
Yeah.
that was my big realization. I'm like, holy hell, I don't know a damn thing.
Yeah. We so, we're at Rage, we're traditionally very anti-agency, but we've actually just started hiring localized agencies to start scaling our international business. We have an okay international business. It's 8 figures a year, multi 8 figures a year, and it grew really, really fast, like during COVID, from a million a year to what it is now. So multiple 100% year-over-year growth in the countries you'd expect. We have an Australian store, a UK store, an EU store, a Canadian store, and then a global store that serves everywhere else on earth. And what we found is that at a certain point, you just hit a ceiling with your brand and messaging, and you have to go more localized. Like, we have to, instead of having a European store, we have to have a German store, and we have to have
Yep.
German ads, and we have to have German creative. And we hired a company called Nest. They're like a big UK agency, and like they're doing a bunch of creative for us. And they did an audit, and the first thing they said is, "Yeah, this is the most American creative I've ever seen in my entire life."
Yeah, man.
They're like, "It's so obvious you guys are an American brand trying to sell here." I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Yeah, well, you just use words that don't exist. You have like." I'm like,
Yeah,
"You have this
dude.
giant truck off-roading?" They're like, "That's not a thing."
Okay, so I've got this is a little bit different, but it's the same. I, my accounting department, they send me, I get an email and they're like, hey, just want to double confirm this payment. And of course, it's a scam, some scam that they got taken in on. But I'm reading the body of the email and it says, hey, please kindly, pay this invoice. This is a membership that whatever. It doesn't matter what the scam was. But I'm like, I took a screenshot and I sent it to my accounting department. I'm like, guys, if the word kindly is in there, it's a scam. It's not from me. Like, I'm never going to say kindly, right? You should know this. And it's so funny to me that like the Indian scammers have not figured out. Like, it's a great example of what you're talking about, Sean. It's like so deeply ingrained in their brain to use that kindly, but you would never use that here. Nobody ever says that. Anyway.
Well, it even the translation thing. So like when you translate your site, I was trying to show, I was sitting down with my one of my cousins is my age. He's running the family business here now. He's a little older, he's 45, 46. And I was showing him stuff that like ChatGPT and popular translators were spitting out. And I was like, does this make sense in Italian? And he'd sit there and he'd be like, well, let me rewrite it for you the way it should be written. And I'm like, that's not at all what ChatGPT said is Italian. He's like that. We just wouldn't say that. He's like that. Like nobody here would ever communicate that way or write that way. And it just got me thinking. I'm like, holy hell! Every single country probably has this in Europe. And if you want to take the country seriously, you need to do what Sean is saying, which is like you need somebody local who will speak local. It's like going from LA to New York, Sean. I mean, you guys notice this in your own country, right? Like there's a big difference in English from parts of like all across America. Same in Canada. Man, middle Canada Canadians are weird. They sound strange
Yeah,
compared
and
to the rest of us.
also all the island Canadians, all those guys on the coast.
The island people are nuts.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking of you, Mike, when I was here with your customers have like 40 simple modern cups, right? Like people just buy lots of these things. They don't have the space for this shit here.
Yeah. That's
Like
a huge thing.
They live in such small spaces and density is insane. And it just got me thinking of like how many product categories just won't work in these markets. Not at any scale. Like when I say won't work, I'm thinking like, how do you get serious scale here? Sean, you don't have that problem. I don't have that problem. We sell small things. But it's nuts at how space constrained everything
Absolutely.
here is. Even
Well,
their
people
garbage trucks
might
are
have a
inside.
water bottle, but they're like a couple of differences. might have a water bottle, but they're not going to have 10.
Mhm.
And if they have a water bottle, they're probably going to have something that's thin in nature and fits into a backpack or is good for traveling. They're not going to have a big 40-ounce tumbler with a handle that, for your SUV. And then the final thing that really struck me the last time I was in Italy is that a lot of the water is, it's room temperature. So
Yep.
like the whole insulation thing just doesn't matter nearly as much. And so all those things kind of, work against what makes it so great here in America.
And they buy a lot of their water by bottle here. So like, and it's not like that just in Italy, but a lot of European countries, their drinking water sucks, like out of the tap. I don't know if that's old plumbing. I actually don't know the reasons. I should have asked, but everything is bottled water. So their recycling system is crazy good, but you don't actually see like drinkware here. Like, in Canada, it's like they're attached to everybody's bag. Like you just don't leave the house
The
without
drinkware
one.
you see when I was in Italy, a lot of the drinkware I saw looked like it was tourists that had brought the
Yes.
drinkware with them.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
then,
for sure.
think like there's 80 million people just in this country. And then there's a whole bunch of other really large, like Germany's another 80 million people. Like these are big pockets of population. And as a brand, like as a consumer company, if you want to tap into these, there's definitely going to be that top layer, English speaking, American buying habits, American lifestyle. But any depth in European markets is going to probably, in a lot of categories, require like merchandising thinking. So like, what are you actually selling here? Beyond, like, way beyond just ads and language and all that bullshit.
Yeah,
Payment
we're
methods.
thinking about developing a totally different products
Yeah.
for that market. But it kind of brings up a good point, which is if you spend any time abroad, you start to understand it's just really hard. International works against you, because you don't know the culture, you're not there, and all these other things. And this is probably a counterintuitive thing. When I first, the first company I was a part of building with my brother, it was like, oh yeah, we're going to go international. And the world, the US is only 400 million people. The world's got 8 billion people. Like we can certainly double, triple, but that it never happens. Like even the
Yeah.
great American consumer brands, maybe like what is Lulu? Sean, you'd know this number. 22% is international. What would be the number?
I mean, you'd be lucky to get 22%. I
Yeah,
mean, 15 is gold standard.
it's counterintuitive, right? It's counterintuitive because you just think, well, the numbers would work out where like you could do at least as much sales internationally as you can do in the US. But once you actually get out there and start traveling, you just realize that basically everything works against it. And the other thing I would say about international is the amount of work it takes in order to get that 15% is much higher. And that, if you're listening to this pod and you're thinking, well, I can grow through international, I would have that pretty low on your list. That's like once you really have penetrated your core market, especially if you're in the US, because it is a heck of a lot easier to grow the US market by 10 or 15% than it is to go and get that 15% internationally.
Lulu's 35%. And that's
Okay.
like
Well, so
a
it can be
very
done.
big brand.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, sorry. Well, Lululemon's unique because they're Canadian. So is that their non-US sales or non-North American sales?
Non-North American.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we typically lump like Canada, the US together, right? So we think international, I think non-North
Does that include
American.
Canada in that Lulu number?
Yes. No, the 35% is not Canadian. That's like Canada, US is probably their
That's impressive.
domestic. And then international is 35, which is high. Yeah,
But I think you're right. I think Canada is an extension of the US for the most part.
It's the 53rd state, man. Like we're America's hat. Like so much of American culture.
They're just waiting to be annexed, right?
Dude,
right, Matt?
they're
Just waiting
trying.
for statehood.
Hey, listen, you guys come in and lower my taxes. I'm not going to complain. I'll be happy. But you know what, Mike? What is interesting though is I do find European brands are better at going international than American brands. Again, broad stroke. But even at the Cucinelli headquarters, I was asking them about how their products, how they merchandise globally, because they make a bunch of stuff. I'm like, can you get it everywhere? And they're like, no, we make like specific things will go to the Canadian market, the American market. So they actually buy and merch those markets separately from the local ones here. And I suspect if you look at the really big brands, they do this, and they do this quite well. I remember years ago, there was in Vancouver, I had met one of the people on the Lululemon brand team, And the reason that they were so successful internationally is like they started to make product for those markets. Right. And photography, like they went deep. It was everything, the different
Yeah.
models, different everything. Like it was brand new companies. But to your point, Mike, this was after they had already done a pretty good job conquering like large swaths of their local markets. But I don't know, Sean, if you ever looked at the actual store expansion path of Lulu, how weird it was. Like they went from Vancouver to like Australia and then back to New York. Like they had a weird path where they put their stores up. I should find that out and bring
Well,
that
yeah,
to the
I mean,
pod.
there was 10 years. So Lululemon started the same year Google started. They're exactly as old as Google is, and it was 10 years or 12 years before they went public, and those 12 years were weird.
Yeah.
like there was years they didn't grow. There was years sales went down. It was through
Yeah.
the great financial crisis. Chip Wilson was still at the fucking the helm, and then he got fired, then he got brought back. Like it was weird, man. It was a weird 10 years. I want to talk about international expansion. You know, we're re-going through this, right? International is really hard to do. You know, our biggest wins in the past year, we did a NASA collab, we did an NFL collab, we did an MLB collab, we did knife launches. None of that shit matters at all international. So we did not set our international markets up for success. That's why we hired localized agencies to be like, okay, what IP should we be doing? What products do these markets actually need? And trying to go way more to a first principles, and also localizing prices, right? Like I want to talk about Levi's as the best example of an international expansion business. Most of their revenue is not US. They're one of the rare cases where most of their revenue is happening abroad. And they've been able to crack Latin America and South America in a way that like no other brand does, right? Just like this globalization of denim, like they're at the forefront of that. And I think it's because they localize prices so that like it's always accessible no matter what market you're in. So if you ever want to like try to win in these markets, it's very hard to be more premium than you are in the US. The US is the largest consumer base with the most amount of money. And there's a ton of consumers in China, right? There's a billion people there, the top 1%. That's 10 million one percenters in China. But the average salary in China is like $12,000 a year, and the average salary in America is like 65. So it's just really, really hard to overcome that gap.
Yeah, every European brand operator I know and talk to will tell you that their margins are lower in European markets than there are in the US. And these are European-based companies. They go to
Well,
the
the
US for the margin.
regulatory environment, it definitely adds a layer of cost, and it's one of the things we haven't talked much about. But I mean, the regulatory environment in Europe sucks. I mean, it brought us the stupid cookie thing that every website does that does nothing. You know, like that's the legacy of European freaking regulation, is just worthless things like forcing me to say accept all cookies, you know, anyway. But the first time we went into Europe, we had some entity in Malta. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but
Oh yeah.
Malta's, yeah, oh yeah. So like there's all
My
kinds
family
of,
banks in
and
Malta.
yeah, and then we had a person that we paid $50,000 a year to live in Malta and like sign some returns or something. Like, I need to go to Malta. Sounds like Malta is where there's just a bunch of people that living the trustee type life. But anyway, like I just think in general, the European market, the international markets, the amount of effort for the amount of return yield is lower. And this is actually something I think about because we're private, is that you get to choose, how much hard stuff you do. And so if you're at 50 million in revenue and you could get to, using Sean's numbers, let's say 57 million in revenue by going international, but that 7 million in revenue is going to make your business 30% more complex. Do you want to do it? Is it even worth it? Because part of what you're trying to generate when you own a business is quality of life. And if you're just adding a bunch of complexity to yourself to make whatever 10% more money, does that even make sense?
Yeah, you have to look at the brain damage of every decision you make has a brain damage cost. And that needs to be like at least like the final check and balance for every decision is how much brain damage are we going to digest by doing this? Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
I was going to say the flip side is you get an extra turn of EBITDA when you go to sell your business if you cross 10% of revenue being international.
Yeah.
And you get an extra turn of EBITDA if you're not dependent on China as a supply chain piece. So like why should you do these things, right? And if you're Mike and you're privately owned your company and you're happy with profit and growth and you don't want to go conquer the world, you want to conquer your market. Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, we have, instead of having one warehouse in America, we have 8 global warehouses I have to fucking manage, and Amazon in those markets and all of these different types of things and different Facebook ad accounts. And I have different ad buyers who do rings international versus rings in America. Like, it is hard to actually balance all these plates. But if you go to sell your business, if you would get 8 times EBITDA for your company right now, oh, you're over 10% international. If you're over 15 or 20, maybe that 8 goes to 9 or 10. And then if you have manufacturing, not just in China, but in Vietnam, in South America, in America, that 10 goes to 11 or 12. So,
And to summarize what Sean's saying, you always have more value if you're diversified, and diversification sucks to do. I think, is that a good way of describing it? Like, I don't think it ever feels good. It's ever less work to diversify. It just means more work, more redundancy, but you're also less susceptible to a single thing taking you down or really harming your company.
In everything, Mike. You diversify product categories, brain damage. You diversify markets, brain damage. Like, just it's all comes with a cost.
Except
what's the
for
upside?
The S&P 500. It's the reason why it's the greatest investment tool of all time.
Yeah, the index fund is the mother of all. Like, if you had to, in order to buy the S&P 500, if you had to individually buy 500 stocks, that's the way most diversification works. But like, when the invent of index funds is amazing. Although it's interesting, this unintended consequence of the index fund is that now, shares are supposed to have votes, and then shareholders are supposed to keep management accountable. Well, what happens when all the votes are held by basically index funds where people are passively investing? How do you actually hold management accountable? But that's kind of a story for another day. Here's an interesting thought for the group. Somewhat, life is about where you choose to diversify and where you choose to concentrate your risk. That your life ends up kind of getting defined by that question. Like, marriage is like concentration risk, right? But seriously, it's like, you're like, I'm only on this person. Like, this person can nuke my life, right? But like, I trust them so much that I will like concentrate my risk in this one person. And so anyway, it's interesting, this idea that like, where we choose to diversify versus where we choose to concentrate ends up having like this huge impact on the way we experience life.
Yeah, Mike, and that's why I'm poly. I'm diversifying my risk. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Operator's Northbeam ad unit. So 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you all about how, if you have any problems with Northbeam, you can directly message Austin, the CEO. He is there. He will set up your ad account. He will make your bet. He'll give you cookies. Really, they have a dedicated team of people, probably 30, 40, 50 reps at this point, who will make sure Northbeam is working correctly and functioning so you can get amazing data out of this ecosystem. They will be more hands-on than any Meta rep will ever be, and they're going to help you understand where your ad dollars are best spent, best positioned, and which ads are working. My team works with the Northbeam team literally every day. They're in my Slack. Maybe you don't get the same level of support as an operator, but they will be there to make sure it's working. And if you're not happy at all, just email Austin. He will take care of you. We use Northbeam every day. It's a benchmarking tool. It's super helpful for forecasting, daily pacing, inter-hour pacing. So we can see, like, if we just launched an ad in 2 hours, if it's working or not. That's what Northbeam does for us. So thank you, Northbeam, for the support. I'm customer probably number one. So thank you so much.
Well, one thing to add regarding Northbeam, because we just went through a contract renewal with them on their specifically on the MMM. And we got a pretty sweetheart deal, and I expect them to come back to us and raise our price, and they kind of deserve it. I was like, let me reach out to the team, and see how it's going, right? Because I'm not in the day to day. I get feedback, and the team was like, they have improved the MMM so much since we started it that they were like, we should definitely pay for this increase. So. And my team hates every agency and most SaaS. The only person that hates SaaS, the only more than my team is Sean, Frank. But yeah, I mean, they came to us. They're like, "Hey, you guys got the sweetheart deal. We were one of the first MMM clients," and I was very, very pleased when my team was like, "It's really working well for us." So that's my little MMM plug.
Here, we'll end on this. This is a very low level e-commerce podcast, but Mike, you were just in the Main Street Summit with a bunch of entrepreneurs. What's the vibe? Just like, what's the gut check? People don't know what this event is. It's kind of like a if you're in the know. So please tell us all about it.
Yeah, so Brent B. Shore puts this together, and basically it's designed for, like in the name you kind of get it, for like people running regular businesses in places like Columbia or, Norman, Oklahoma or whatever. And I think a lot of these people are they're doing search funds, and they're buying businesses, they're operating companies. In general, I felt like it was interesting because at those conferences, like, you'll have turnover from year to year. And so you'll get different groups, and every year's group feels a little bit differently. But I'm starting to hear more optimism about people wanting to buy and having some success with these search funds. But I think we've been hearing for a while about the baby boomers retiring and the silver tsunami. And I mean, there's definitely going to be some opportunities out there. I think another thing, anytime you're around people that are new to operating, though, that you pick up pretty quickly, is that there's a lot of naivete about all the junk that comes with actually operating a business. Like, it's interesting hearing people that, have whatever Wharton MBAs, and they're like, it sounds like it'd be fun to run a business. And then they start doing it, and they realize, like, wow, like, just there's a lot that comes with that. So it was a pretty diverse group. And right now I'm actually reading through Shane Parrish's book, Thinking Clearly. He was one of the people there. There were a lot of interesting people from a bunch of different walks of life. So I don't know. My biggest take is that things feel pretty healthy. There's been some dialogue about the economy, and some people are like, this is the best economy ever. And Nate Silver's like, no, it's pretty good, but it's not that great. But I think it's pretty clear we're in a good economic time on the whole. We tend to talk about this really contextualized to just e-commerce. How's it going? Sean, I think a couple episodes ago, you made a good argument for, like, hey, we've taken some of the pain and now we're back in growth land, which is great. So, make hay while the sun is shining, I guess, because I think generally this is a good environment. I think everybody's really curious what's going to happen with the election, because the tax environment is going to move somehow, pretty significantly. So there is a lot of wait and see that I'm hearing from people of, like, I'm going to make decisions after November 5th.
Yeah, no, that's good context. Two things. We're a very big player inside of Best Buy. They told us recently that we are the fastest growing brand in Best Buy history. So whatever that's worth to you, that's who I am.
Wow.
But they were at my office. We're hanging out there in Southern California for their big, like, a store manager event, and they were like, "Yeah, October sucks, but we think November and December are going to be super strong." And I'm like, "Oh, why does October suck?" Because we're having a really strong October. So I was just like, "Oh, why does October suck?" They're like, "Oh, the election." I'm like, "Oh, I guess that makes sense if you're Best Buy." Like, the macroeconomic factors, like, really play a role. Like, if somebody's going to come in and spend $1,000 on a TV or a new surround sound system, that person's probably a little cautious what happens the next 30 days. Where if you're a smaller brand like us, like, you can just spend more money on ads, launch a new product. Like, we've had 2 or 3 product launches in October that have crushed it. So, like, my sales are doing great, and, like, Best Buy doesn't. It's too big of a business where those bumps don't mean anything to them.
Mm-hmm.
They're an index fund on
Yeah,
consumer.
totally.
That's right.
And now, Jason's not here, so we can have a very rational conversation about the election. Matt thinks that's funny. The way I was thinking about it, like if you stack Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, like what are the actual policy differences that, like, are going to meaningfully affect our lives? They're both going to be incredibly hard on China. The Trump tariffs became the Biden tariffs, which will become the Harris tariffs, or we'll get more Trump tariffs. Either way, the U.S.-China relationship is going to continue to be strained. And then, so, like, that's a loss for both candidates. Like either way, if you're a Chinese dependent business, like you're gonna have to suffer some pain. Then you get into uh like the act like if you want to sell your business, a Harris administration is going to be worse for you over 4 years, right? That's probably the main difference is like if corporate tax rate or long-term capital gains rates go up, you will just pay more under a Harris regime, right? Like that is the difference. I think if you remove the coloring, if you put on just gray colored glasses, they're going to be pretty similar, right? Like maybe one is more hawkish, maybe one is more dovish, but like really what I think is the election is that's on the line is a 10% capital gains income swing. So I'd love to hear your guys' perspective. Mine is that like we're very much we're voting for a horse or a zebra, and the horse is painted, right? So that's what I'm seeing. So Mike and Matt, what do you guys think?
Yeah, so I think if you look at our country, I think it's easy right now to get drawn into kind of the culture war part of the election. But I think over the next 10 years, it's all going to be about economics because you just have a lot of very ominous numbers. You've got all of these people that are going to be on Social Security and all of these entitlements. And you have the national debt at whatever 38 trillion. I don't know. It's going up at just basically an exponential rate at this point, and basically none of the math works. And what we have seen is that there is no one with the political will to do anything other than just hasten its approach. And like, Trump's talking about like, hey, from now you can deduct the interest on your car loan, and like talking about, I'm all for, hey, trying to stimulate business with smart tax policy. But the problem is that we spend a lot more money than we take in, that nobody has anything close to a plan about how we start to bridge that gap, which means that the debt keeps growing, growing, growing. And as the debt keeps growing, 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 things get less and less sustainable. And so I think if you're running a business, this would be a good time to just take a rational look at the world. And let me just tell you about what's going to happen over the next 10 years. The government is going to come for a lot more of your money, no matter who wins this election. A lot more of your money. And interestingly, this isn't just true of America. This is true of Canada. This is true of the European countries. They all promised all these entitlements. None of them have the money to pay these entitlements. And my personal theory, this is my kind of radical prediction, is that voting lines are going to split very differently in 5 or 10 years. They're going to split over age and not over like social issues, because it's basically going to come down to the old people saying, I want all my entitlements, and the young people saying, I don't want to pay for them. And that you're going to have a massive amount of conflict about that as these countries basically, go deeper and deeper in debt and can't afford all the things they've promised.
Matt, what are your thoughts as the non-voter?
The resident socialist. Yeah, right. Capitalist living in a socialist country. I tend to agree largely with what Mike is saying. So our country raised our capital gains inclusion rates this year, I think. It didn't look like a lot on the surface, but it was like, the issue I have is these policies are not designed to generate more actual revenue for the government. They're just designed to divide. Like that ultimately, that's what happened up here, is like they went after capital gains inclusions on the very, very wealthy. It's going to net generate nothing because the wealthy are just going to play more games and they're not going to pay. Like that's just, if you're listening to this and you're in the side of like tax the wealthy, like, dude, they're not paying. There's going to always be a way around paying.
Well, and they're more mobile than ever, Matt. I mean, this is the point that everybody needs to understand, is that the wealthy they're going to move around. Yep. Like, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I posted the net inflow outflow of millionaires, and Britain is hemorrhaging millionaires at a crazy rate. And the UAE is taking in more millionaires than anybody else. But it's exactly what you're talking about, Matt. Like, people are going to flee to areas and they're going to give up their citizenship to do it, to where the tax policies are advantageous.
Dude, it's really, really hard to give American citizenship because
yes,
the guy from Facebook did that one of the original co-founders, and they changed the law that if you ever give up your citizenship, you have to give them 40% of your wealth. Like they changed the
Wow.
entire law because of this fucking guy.
U.S. is one of the countries that your taxes follow you no matter where you go.
It's the only
Right.
country. It's the only.
Yeah. Oh, we don't do that. I'm happy we don't do that. You can actually give up being Canadian and move. I know a lot of people, Mike, that by a lot I mean like more than 10, right? That have given up Canadian citizenship and moved to a low tax or no tax jurisdiction around the world just because they could, and because they got to a point where they felt like they paid enough as an individual.
Yeah, look, I think Mike's totally right, but like I think the bull case scenario is I think we can hyperinflate away a lot of debt. I think we can basically refinance the debt at 0% interest rate. That's why I think the world's destined to go back to 0% interest rates, because
Yeah.
we have too much debt that if we set the interest rate and we have a lot of debt, we're going to set it at zero. That's what we're going to do. We're going to refinance it, and then we're going to hyperinflate it away. I think we will push Social Security benefits from, I think it's 65 or 67 for full benefits now. I think we'll push it to 70 or 72. And then my radical idea is we're just going to start selling citizenship, because American citizenship, we tax you wherever you live, and the taxes aren't that low. We'll just sell them for 100K a pop. And I know a lot of fucking people who would just pay that, right?
It makes sense, but right now, like you just, as long as you can run a 40-yard dash in decent time and you're willing to travel, you can just kind of get in and kind of backdoor it. And so I think that this is this is another issue that's really interesting, is that people are saying, well, without illegal immigration, then the United States doesn't have enough people willing to build houses and do some of these other jobs. But I think your point's a really good one, Sean, that, like, again, I'm not a political figure, but it seems like what you'd want to do is set up your immigration policy where people that have something to bring are the ones that are coming, whether that's economically or intellectually or whatever. And maybe rationality will, what you just said was a rational idea. It seems less rational to just say, hey, whoever is willing to kind of come across the border, we're going to let them in. But
Well, yeah, and that's why I think the betting odds are in Donald Trump's favor, because I think a lot of people don't like what's happening, but I'm okay with two scenarios. We either have a very hard to get into country that has a lot of limitations on immigration with a lot of social benefits like European countries, or we let everybody in and we get rid of social benefits. It's just there's this middle ground where you can't have both, right?
you can't have both.
Yeah, I'm actually for a bigger, stronger America, right? Like I would love America to have a population of 800 million people, because that's just more fucking people buying stuff, living here, doing
More
stuff,
wallets.
contributing. Yeah, exactly, contributing to society. But I'm a rationalist. To get that done, like the reason why that worked in the 1900s is because there wasn't a social security net, right? And like,
Yeah.
it's a cool thing we added, but I think you have to give something up in exchange for that.
Well, one of the languages, it's interesting to hear the way that the goalposts kind of move around and the way that people talk about things. But one of the things, if you watch the language over the last 10 years, is one of the ways you move the goalposts is you say, well, healthcare is a human right, right? Like, kind of bestowed by God. Everybody has a right to healthcare. And it sounds pretty good. That's actually a very expensive thing that you just said to a society, to say, like, yeah, if you happen to be in a culture, like, you have the right to, whatever medical care you need. And that's kind of the problem, Sean, is that, like, it doesn't actually work. And anybody who's run a business knows, like, well, you got to pay for that somehow. And the more that you kind of say, hey, we're expanding the way that we define what people are entitled to or what their rights are, the more that we've got to pay. And basically what we've done as a society is we haven't expanded taking in money, and we've greatly expanded the idea of what people are entitled to. And those two things won't work long term. And the biggest question of our generation is probably going to be, when the rubber hits the road, what happens, and hopefully there's some kind of like a peaceful and positive solution to it. But there's some conflict ahead for sure.
Yeah. But anyway, this all started because I think a lot of people are, at least in physical retail, waiting to get through October, waiting to get through early November. Election seasons are always fucking crazy. I remember 2016, 2020 was crazy for a lot of different reasons. So I think people are nervous about what's happening. But from an e-com operator, from someone who runs a small business, right? Who, of course, like the entire supply chain is dependent on China. When I look at the two candidates, there's a lot of overlap. And it's really just, do you want to hold your business for 4 years or do you want to sell it in the next 4 years? Because if you're cool to hold it, then there's actually no difference, I don't think. But if you want to sell it, a Trump regime will have lower capital gains. So that's one of the benefits. So any final words before we end this, guys?
I really think that the supply chain implications are going to be fascinating by either candidate. I can't predict it. I talked to a lot of people about this, but for people who are in the world of making and shipping physical things around the world, something's changing.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the port strike that kind of
Right.
happened and it got resolved. Here's the craziest on this kind of protectionary tariff thing. The craziest thing about that port strike is that they said there were 50,000 people striking, but there's only 25,000 people that work. And how can that be true? And apparently the answer is about 25,000 of the 50,000 people that are getting paid by that union do no work. Out of a previous strike, they negotiated something called container royalties that basically pay for half of the workforce to just sit at home, which is insane. And like, anyway, so it's like, I think you're right, Sean. I think we're in a protectionary environment and America has the biggest economy. And so, like, right now, if our car makers were having to go up against what's coming out of China, we would be getting smoked. And so we're going to throw massive tariffs on it. And that's probably just probably a preview of what we're going to see for the next 10 or 20 years.
Dude, totally. And the reason why, like, look at the whole world, the reason to still keep money in US assets and think the US has a great future is we have a ton of fucking people. We have a young population. We have a very rich population, and everyone still uses dollars. So we are going to take advantage of that and get out of this problem by interest rates will go to zero. Then we will print a fuck ton of money and everyone will have to buy it. And you know, our GDP will go from what is it, like 30 trillion right now, something like that. It'll go to 60 trillion. Our debt will go to 60 trillion. We'll get back to 1-to-1, but it will just be because we hyperinflated away, right? But for that to work, you have to balance the budget while you're inflating shit. Anyway, Mike for governor, me for president, and yes,
Yeah, Sean is going to be the head of the Fed. He is going to hyperinflate this stuff away. For sure. Well, I don't know if we'll use any of the election talk, but I do think it's going to create a really interesting business environment, and it's going to be consequential. I think your point you're making, Sean, is a good one. That as different as these people behave, that they are, and they tend to like this is the most important election of our lifetime. I think really the economics are going to guide behavior, and they're going to have very similar behaviors. So. It's a good point for anybody freaking out about the election. I'm actually flying on election day. I'm like, out of here. And you know what? No matter what happens in that election, I think it's a great week to miss because half the country is going to be freaking out no matter what happens. And I'll be in China.
Just turn the TV off, shut the phone off. No, look, I'm glad you raised it, Sean, because I think it's on the mind of a lot of operators right now. Right.
Yeah.
October's always crappy, and then you throw an election on top, and it's just like people are thinking about it, so it's got to be talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I'm hearing from major retailers that like they care about it. But I just want to put everybody's mind is either way, I think it's gonna be fine. It's like
yeah, we've said this before, but it's like it's easy to kind of when you kind of narrow down on just America and say, man, we got problems. This isn't going well. That's not going well. But then when you zoom out and you say, compared to the rest of the world, like how's it going for Russia and the people who are de-dollarizing? Not well. It's going terrible, right? Like this idea that you can just kind of get off the dollar standard. It's like, yeah, have fun out there in the cold, like it's amazing. I was talking to somebody recently, Turner Novak. Yeah, I think you know him as well, Sean. But he was talking about, one of the businesses they're invested in. It was a business the guy started in Iran, and then Iran just decided your business belongs to the government now. And it's like that stuff doesn't happen in America. but the lack of corruption, the financial stability, the dollar, like we can underestimate the value of these things, but like everybody else would love to have the problems that we have.
Right. And like, look, El Salvador is an amazing country right now. So my wife's family's all from El Salvador. They were just down there for a couple months, and like everyone talks about how safe it is and how awesome it is. Her grandpa's in the emergency room right now because he drank the water and then he didn't take the pill to kill the parasites, and he has like a huge parasite infection like in his gut right now. And like, dude, it sucks because I want that country to be healthy and prosperous. They have an amazing leader doing great stuff. Everyone loves it. But like, dude, that is like human life in a lot of fucking places. Is you got to
Yep.
deal with stuff like that, parasites in the drinking water. So, for most of America, we're pretty okay. And I think we should really, count our blessings. Even if we have contentious elections and wars and shit, everyone's pretty happy.
Well, and I hope, Sean, I'll end on a positive note. I hope that we remember that as we go into the election, that the fact that we're able to have elections that are legitimate and that like the previous, like nobody thinks Joe Biden is just going to be like, nope, I'm hanging on to the office, like that we have elections, we have transitions of power, we get to vote, we have this amazing legacy heritage that we get to inherit and economy and stuff like that. And if you're not spending some time being thankful for it, you should, because we shouldn't take it for granted. And we should do what we can to keep it going well, because we're all beneficiaries of it. We get to live better lives than people, than basically kings lived 100 years ago.
Dude,
right.
And it's such a shame that no person from either party just says what you say, Mike. I would vote for the guy coming out there and be like, hey, look, guys, this is pretty fucking good. Like, yeah, I wish a couple things would be different, but like, I love life right now. I'd vote for that guy.
Yes. This is the worst part, I think, about the Democratic Party, is that it's the everything sucks party. It's like, well, there's this injustice or this bad thing. And I'm just like, and like the Republican Party is kind of constantly looking backwards of like, well, things were great 50 years ago, but they suck now. And I'm like, hey, is anybody looking around? Things are awesome. And like, are there things that have maybe gotten a little bit worse than 50 years ago? Sure. But there's a whole bunch of other things that have gotten a lot better. And are there things that could be better than today? Sure. But it's the best time ever to be alive. And you know what? Tomorrow will be the new best day ever to be alive. And then the day after that will be the new best day ever to be alive. And that is good perspective. That's the kind of perspective we should have.
Bro, I don't think anything was better 50 years ago. You know how many serial killers there were in the 70s? That fucking place sucked.
Dude, there was a hilarious Daily Show segment. This is the first time I think Trump ran for president. And as you guys know, I obviously lean more conservative, but I thought it was great. The person was just going around and asking people at the Republican National Convention that had, MAGA hats on and stuff. They were just like, hey, what period do you feel like America was greatest? We want to make America great again. What period was it? And so people would be like, well, I really think the 50s, 1950s. And the interviewer was like, yeah, that was awesome. I mean, except for segregation, and the lynchings and stuff like that. It was awesome. And then, they ask somebody else and they say some different time period. And it's like, oh yeah, that was great. Except for, the Depression or, whatever. And it's like, no matter what period somebody said in the past of like, oh, that's when things were great. There was plenty of stuff that was not great and that sucked. And we can easily, look at the past and have these kind of rose-colored glasses. But I just think about a couple of the things that, like Tesla's event that they had recently, them landing that rocket. Like, you're just like, this is an amazing time to be alive. Like, why would you want to live any time but now?
Bro, you can get any food you want delivered to your front door
with a private burrito taxi, Sean.
Exactly, dude. And like, yeah, look, it's expensive, but it's not that expensive. All right, guys. So, somewhere in there was a podcast episode. So, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. Operators Podcast till we die. Talk to you later. Bye.
That's the pod.
You made it. An amazing episode of the Operators Podcast. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing to the newsletter. Thank you to fulfill the best sponsor on earth, Northbeam, Postscript. They're tied for 2 of the best sponsors on earth. Love them. Love what they do for us. Thank you for being here. Subscribe, like, share. Follow me on Twitter. Follow the other guys on Twitter. Talk to you later. Goodbye.